Hello and welcome to Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. I am Wale Famrewa. Thank you for joining us. Our program focuses on how Nigeria is moving away from a focus on crude oil as a primary revenue source. And on today's program, we focus on the agriculture sector. I am in the head office of FMN. It's a group that started in Nigeria well over 50 years ago. It has evolved from a company that was importing wheat into the country and processing that into flour, thus the name Flour Mills. But over the last 5 years, the company has emerged as a huge investor in Nigeria's food production and the agro-allied sector. On today's program, we focus on how the Nigerian government and other players are taking a closer look at agriculture as a primary revenue source. Nigeria's agriculture story is one of a country endowed with abundant resources, but years of neglect has seen the sector perform way below its potential to drive economic activity and to contribute to government revenues.
So currently, agric represents about 24–25% of the gross domestic product. Nigeria has got about 84 million hectares of arable land, which is just a gold mine sitting for somebody to try and do something about it. Unfortunately, we can't even feed ourselves, which is a big problem, difficult to reconcile both. It's the largest employer of labor, but those are people who are poor and some of the poorest people. So on one hand, we think they're employed, but they're not. If a sector represents 25% of your GDP, it's significant. That's 1/4. What is missing is, number one, revenue from that sector. Government is not making money from agriculture. And number two, in terms of foreign exchange receipts, if we're not selling crude oil, it's almost like there's nothing else we're selling to the rest of the world.
People are becoming more and more aware that this is where our future lies. It was interesting to listen to people saying that before the oil, after all, Nigeria was on the world map. We were probably number 2 in cocoa, we were number 1 in palm oil, and probably number 1 or 2 in groundnut. And that's what built the foundation for Nigeria anyway.
Agriculture definitely plays a large role. That's why the Western region in the days actually was borrowing federal government. The regional government in the late 60s and early 70s were actually financed the federal government. And all the income didn't come from mining or from any other source. It was all from agriculture.
The First Republic, it used to be, we used to pay poll tax. Then for political populism, one governor woke up one day and said, oh, how much is it? I remember it was the PRP. Let's abolish tax. And the NPN, of which I was part, also said, yes, let's abolish tax. Now, it had an impact.
We're not making money from agric. Take countries like Brazil. They make over $59 billion from just export of agricultural products and commodities and the rest of it. Because we focus a lot on raw produce and commodities, we're not adding a lot of value to what we produce from that sector. And the bulk of those things, if not everything, from a VAT point of view, is exempt from VAT. So when you buy tomato, when you buy yam, when you buy gari, there's no VAT on it, which makes sense. Companies, very few companies are in that sector, they're loss-making. They can't even pay company income tax. If you talk about exports, very little. And in fact, on top of the fact that you don't get a lot from that sector in terms of tax revenue, there's a lot of incentives that they are given. Whatever little they export, they get export expansion grants. When they form any company, they get pioneer status. by the time you put all of this together, you're probably getting a negative contribution to tax revenue from that sector.
A sharp decline in crude oil prices have moved the spotlight to agriculture as a source of foreign exchange revenue and a crucial catalyst for economic growth and development.
We have to export to survive. And we're targeting 10 plantation crops. We're targeting markets. We have them already. The value, the import value of oil would have diminished so badly that if Nigeria doesn't have a solid alternative in reasonable quantities to sell to the rest of the world, then we're going to be in severe trouble repaying the debts we owe now.
The Buhari government has signaled its attention to agriculture as an alternative to the oil sector as the driver of economic growth and development. The new government is now building on the achievements of the previous administration.
There's been some improvement which started with the last government. I mean, what they achieved in terms of fertilizer reaching the people who need them, and then cutting off all the middlemen who make a kill out of the fertilizer, and then to the disadvantage of the farmers.
Agriculture is one of the areas where Nigeria has very, very high comparative advantage because of our location, because of our weather, because of our climate, and because of our aquatic resources. All these 774 local governments in the country can support one form of agricultural endeavor or the other, right? From cultivation, production of vegetables and fruits and carbohydrates to animal protein, talking of aquatic culture, animal husbandry, livestock.
We developed a new agenda called the Green Alternative, building on what we found when we arrived. And that has made the flow much easier. But then, as soon as we came in, we had to make some adjustments. First, we decided to bring in the Universities of Agriculture under the ministry. They were meant to be there. We have an arrangement with Morocco now, and we are beginning to sell. We are bringing phosphate from Morocco. We are adding potassium from other sources and blending NPK here. Selling now at 5,500 a 50 kg bag, which is the lowest in fertilizer price in the last 1 decade. Nigeria produced 17 million tons of rice paddy last year, almost twice the national need. As a result, we've brought in 200 rice mills, which will start distributing this weekend. That means that by the end of this year, this country has no business importing 1 grain of rice. Indeed, we'll be in a position to start exporting by December this year. Then, of course, we have the Anchor Borrowers Program, which the CBN introduced. But the CBN is not into retail banking. We have restructured the Bank of Agric to take over that lending portfolio so that credit can get to farmers at even lower than 9%.
So the central bank Anchor Borrower program is a very good example to start from. So federal government, we had the challenges we had last year, and then there was a need to actually boost primary production, particularly for rice, which was one of the largest gulp of foreign exchange earnings and a staple across the country. So there was a necessity, and then the central bank said, worked with a number of state governments, enlisted farmers, ensured they had bank accounts, and then provided credits. It was the central bank releasing money to the commercial banks through the MSMEDF fund window to the commercial banks, who then on lend to the farmers.
The drive to tap Nigeria's potential in agriculture is not only pushed by the federal government. State governments are also thinking differently and taking actions to unlock this potential.
At state level, you have produce taxes that are applied, and that, for a state like Ondo State, is a significant chunk of what they've earned. And one of the states like Cross River, you've actually seen one of the best examples where they actually bring in those funds that they earn from this product to drive creation of a new generation of entrepreneurs that are planting and expanding their number of trees.
The FMN Group is one of several large companies embracing the growth opportunity in Nigeria's agriculture space. Over the last 5 years, the group has invested over 150 billion naira in a variety of agro-allied businesses.
Just go back 4 years, you find out that our agro-allied businesses accounted for only 10% of the total revenue of the group. Today, it accounts for 20%, and we hope to reach 35% in the next 5 years. And when we are talking of agro-allied businesses, it's really on 3 pillars. The agriculture itself, which is the production, the agri-input, which is like fertilizer, seeds, chemicals, and then agro-processing, which really process the produce from the farms, to give us food that we can have on the table. As of today, 20% of our total revenue in the group come from the agro-allied businesses. But if you look at the profit, the earning of the company, they actually contribute 25%. So you can see from there that agro-allied businesses are really money spinners.
There's research, there's input sector, there's trading, there's storage, there's cold chain, there's the protein sector that is one of the largest growing, the livestock, you could have bush. There's so much that you can do, between production, processing, value addition, storage and preservation, insurance, for instance.
If you look at, the inputs, for agriculture, you need fertilizer. Not just fertilizer, but the right fertilizer, and also the fertilizer use, the technology in using fertilizer is very important. Then you have the seeds. You have to have the right seed that will give you the right yield. And of course, the propagation of that seed is very important. Then you have the chemicals, and then the extension services, agronomic practices. These are all the inputs and support, that you give to the farmers. It's very important that, we see where the opportunities, lie for investors like ourselves.
Agribusiness has proven to be a profitable venture for the FMN Group and several other large-scale investors. But could the drive to increase agri-exports come at a cost to the local market? After the break, we take a look at Nigeria's policy environment for agriculture. And we also introduce you to one of several budding agri-entrepreneurs amid a wave of fresh interest in what many are calling Nigeria's new oil. Efforts to establish agriculture as a source of revenue for Nigeria's government and foreign exchange in Africa's top oil producer have seen several large companies invest billions of dollars into the sector, taking advantage of the changing environment.
If you look at the existing tax laws, there are pockets of incentives directed towards agricultural sector, which I doubt if many people are even aware of. So to my knowledge, the people who are taking advantage of these benefits are few. They are like the big farms like the Obasanjo farm, the Dantata farm, and so on and so forth. For example, the rate for agricultural businesses is more attractive, 20% compared to others at the rate of 30%. There are also reliefs relating to capital allowance and also loss reliefs and so on and so forth. There are reliefs when you export and when they bring the proceed through government-approved channels, a host of them.
While crude oil still accounts for over 90% of export revenues, There has been a notable increase in agricultural exports as more entrepreneurs try to exploit the sector's potential. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, agricultural exports have been rising over the last few quarters and were up 82% in the first quarter of this year, compared with the last quarter of 2016. But some stakeholders have expressed concerns about the impact that a rush to export could have on a local market that is still developing.
If we are cultivating today, for instance, only 20 million hectares in Nigeria, why don't we go to 40 million hectares? All right? Nigeria is about 90 million hectares. So why don't we have farm that will scale up to that? That is very important. You know, before you can have surplus for export. You cannot be exporting and starving yourself domestically, all right? Which seems to be what some people think is not good enough. You have to produce enough to satisfy local, and domestic consumption before you can think of, exports.
While agricultural exports are picking up, the items traded are primarily raw commodities such as cashew nuts, soya beans, and sesame seeds. But analysts say that processing products for exports to realize greater value from what is traded should be the focus of policy going forward.
It is better that Nigeria produces crops and add value before exporting. What will earn Nigeria money, as is the objective of the government, is to ensure that we produce enough crops locally, we add value for exports. That is the key to creating wealth and earning foreign exchange.
Given the growing interest of young Nigerians in agriculture, the recent economic slowdown is proving to be a blessing, with more and more white-collar workers now exploring opportunities in agriculture and making the transition from the office to the field.
The response to agriculture in the last 2 years has been phenomenal. And one day I'll ask you, media people, to help talk to farmers in the villages and hear what they have to say. They've never had it so good. And then I have young people moving in, even civil servants, soldiers, customs officers, even journalists like you are now responding and asking questions, what can we do?
You're beginning to see the right type of skill that you need to, and talent that you need in the agricultural sector picking interest. And as they start to think through it, if they don't all have to go to the farm, but then you will see entrepreneurial spirits and ideation happen in agriculture. You see technology meeting agriculture. You see financial payment solutions meeting agriculture, and people, e-commerce, for instance, a lot of e-commerce sites are coming up focused on agricultural products.
Nuli Foods is one of a fresh crop of small agri-businesses seeking to tap the Nigerian opportunity. Founded over 2 years ago, the company buys fruits and vegetables from local farmers and creates a range of fresh juice brands. Its founder tells us that the company has since expanded the scope of products offered.
We wanted to broaden our offering to other things to give consumers a great experience with us. So since then, we've opened up the first farm-to-table food chain in Nigeria, where we bring locally grown produce to the Nigerian population through our products. So not just juices, but smoothies, salads, using cassava flour to make waffles and pancakes, and truly developing a homegrown brand that is maximizing our agriculture potential and opportunity.
The model of the Nuli Food Company is one that many analysts say is the key to true prosperity from agriculture. Adding value to primary crops not only provides greater revenues for local businesses, but also offers opportunities for Nigeria to participate in the global processed foods market.
Packaged foods globally, it's a $3 trillion market. When you're talking about your already packaged vegetable oil, coconut oil, Indomie noodles, whatever. And I feel like globally, African food products don't feature. You don't go to the stores when you're traveling and you see supermarkets and find that. And that's just a huge potential for foreign exchange revenues as well. So how do we use our locally grown produce to add value to it, process it, and create food brands that are well packaged, that look good, that are, when it comes to standards and qualities of hygiene, and basically for our in-house local domestic market consumption. Nigeria has over 180 million people, and then to export these products so that people can truly experience African food products.
But for Nigeria to truly emerge as a major player in the global food and commodities industry, deliberate policy reforms must address infrastructure challenges. These reforms must make Nigerian producers more competitive globally, and cheap financing must also be sourced with the restructuring of the Bank of Agriculture.
Agriculture and agro-allied businesses should not be conducted with commercial interest rates. It will not work. We need to support agriculture and agro-allied businesses with subsidized funding.
The recapitalization process is ongoing, but first we have to really modernize the bank. They're still using passbooks. You can't do that now. Everybody is on the system. And this bank would have 87 branches and a huge capital base. The buildings alone owned by the Bank of Agric are worth a whole heap of cash, right? So we are about to start a cooperation arrangement with the Rabobank of Holland. They lend at 3.5% to farmers. So we're working with them. We're looking at the cooperative, the Agric Bank of Morocco, to see what model they are using to lend money. They've gone so low as they lend money to vulcanizers and roadside mechanics. They give them loans and they recover. A recovery rate of nearly 94%.
Special investment zones are very, very key. They are very, very key, because the moment you create that zone, it comes with its incentives. It's not something that is to be discussed. The tax holiday, the non-interference of this and that, at least for a period of time, that will attract people. You notice that it may, apart from even Nigerians, in that it can also attract foreign investments a lot.
We need more land that should be free for these crops. 2, we need to empower the farmer, right? Most of the farmers, like you said, are subsistence farmers, but can they increase their hectarage? Number 3, we need to think about the input, seed. I keep on talking about seed because if we do not have the right seed and break the code of yield, farmer will not be able to make money. Think about it. If you put corn into the soil, you grow corn, and it's only 2 tons per hectare that you are achieving. If you had expended over 200,000 to do 1 hectare, it means then that only 2 tons you have to sell to cover your costs and also have surplus or rather profit for yourself. 2 metric tons per hectare is not enough for the farmer to cover his costs and be able to make money. If you compare with other countries, we are told that even in Mexico, they do 8 metric tons per hectare. In South Africa, they do over 5 tons per hectare. Why should we do 2 in Nigeria? So we need to look at, the type of seed, the type of fertilizer, the type of agronomic practices, and help our farmers to be able to increase their yield.
Fixing the structural issues that can improve Nigeria's competitiveness as an agri-economy is set to unleash a new crop of entrepreneurs that are already exploring what is possible in a tough environment.
Apart from being an entrepreneur with them, I'm also an investor. So I'm always looking out for these exciting opportunities of people doing good, impactful things that can, in the agriculture sector. You have I mentioned earlier some of the snacks that we carry, or people turning fruits into dried snacks. You have young people who are doing things in the area of aquaculture, rearing fish and packaging and selling this. You have people opening up similar type ideas to Nuli and trying to do that. You have young people going into the farming of rice, oil palm, processing of maize, for example, for animal feed. You have some going into poultry. I think for me, it's always music to my ears whenever I get a call or messages that come through my social media platform telling me they either want information or they want mentorship and they just want guidance.
Given the underdevelopment of Nigeria's agriculture sector, it seems more likely that its impact on revenues will be more related to export earnings in the short term. These earnings have grown sharply in the last 6 months, albeit from a very low base. But as policy action supports large-scale producers and agro-businesses, it could become an important source of tax revenues as long as the government stays the course and continues to improve the environment for agribusiness entrepreneurs. On that note, we've come to the end of this edition of Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. Until we come back with a fresh look at the drive to shift the focus of Nigeria away from oil, I am Wole Famrewa saying thank you for watching.